So Nikon has revealed the new Z5 Mark II, which means it's time for the exponential crisis of whether to upgrade my Z5 Mark I, or are the specs even that much better to make a difference? And how do I justify spending that money again when I already have a camera that I like? Or should I just save up for a A7 Mark III? If you've been following along with the channel, you know that I've been using my Z5 as my main rig for the last few years. Photography-wise, it's awesome, but there are still some major drawbacks keeping it from being my perfect go-to camera for all situations. Let's start with the pros and cons of the Z5 Mark I and see how they compare to the Z5 Mark II. The Z5 and Z6 were Nikon's launch models for the incoming Z line, with the Z5 being the entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera. Over the last 5 years, this camera has built the reputation as being one of the best values for the dollar. Sporting the new CMOS sensor having 24.3 megapixels, the clarity and depth of the Z5's photos made it tough to choose anything else in its price range for $1,400. That's if you're shopping brand new, of course. Even at that price though, I'd argue that the Z5 still punched a little above its weight. The colors that you get from Nikon are not as moody as Sony and aren't as poppy or stylized as Fujifilm, but Nikon wasn't going for that with the new Z-line sensors. Instead, Nikon proudly advertises having some of the most accurate and natural color science in their sensors. The Z5 at the time was right at par for an entry-level full frame, shooting up to 4.5 images per second. But it was the processor and image stabilization that really made this camera stand out. The XPEED 6 sensor has two types of autofocus detection. People, as every modern camera should, and dogs, for I guess those who despise cats for some reason. Focus speeds is one of those metrics that I've never really trusted, since pretty much everything from settings to time of day can have an effect on it. The focus detection though, especially for portraits, is one of the biggest reasons I went with the Z5. Detecting and locking onto a person's face during photo shoots is something I've never noticed this camera struggle with. Granted that detection has fluctuated over the years, but again, it's more likely due to environmental changes rather than it just doesn't notice a person's face. But this is also something that we'll touch on going over the Z5 Mark II. But hands down, the reason I enjoy using my Z5 so much is because the camera simply looks amazing. I've never been a Canon guy, as Canon bodies are just too rounded off and they look like the bubble body F-150s of the early 2000s. I've really been a fan of the camera bodies with more serious, harder edges, making the camera look tough. Something about Nikon and Sony cameras that when you look at them, you instantly get drawn in with a sleek design that has a purposeful, down-to-business look. Hey, I get it. At the end of the day, it's just a camera. Really, the only things that should matter are the inside specs and picture quality. But think of it this way. If you took the power and performance of, say, a C8 Corvette, but you gave it the body of a Pontiac Aztek, chances are you wouldn't want to drive that monstrosity of a car as much, simply because its looks kinda suck. Sure, it would probably win races and could do burnouts all day, but if it doesn't look cool, you wouldn't want to take it out of the garage. But this is how I see cameras. If I don't like how my camera looks, I tend to shoot with it less and just leave it in my camera bag. The more visually appealing the camera, the more you're apt to use it. All this talk about how good of a value the Z5 is, you know there's gotta be some bad to it. My biggest gripe that I've talked about regularly since I've got it is video capabilities, or lack thereof. Technically, yes, it can record video even up to 4K, but that's at 30 frames per second and it's cropped. Recording is also capped on all resolutions to only 30 minutes. It was advertised to be capable of up to 85 minutes recording time, but in practice, I was ever only able to achieve 30 minutes. Not really ideal for recording anything other than just a few scenes of B-roll. It's also why I don't even bother using it to record any of my videos, and instead, I just bought a DJI Pocket. But enough about that old timer. Let's talk about the new Z5 Mark II. That's the reason we're all here anyway. Starting with appearance, the Mark II looks just about the same, with the only changes being the Z logo moved from the bottom corner to the top of the frame. The Nikon logo also looks a lot sleeker, removing the curve and straightening out the letters. On the top of the frame, we see the same mode selection, setting wheels, and shutter layout. Except there is a new button added that you'll be able to access up to 31 built-in color presets. The Mark I also has color presets, but they're buried within menus, and honestly, I didn't even know I had those until fairly recently. Moving internally, the Mark II also has a CMOS sensor. However, this one will be backlit, meaning photo clarity will be significantly better and photos will have less noise at night or in darker scenarios. This will overall give the photos from the Mark II much more detail and far better sharpness than before. The speed of the Mark II will also be much better, with roughly 10 FPS using the mechanical shutter, and up to 15 FPS when you switch to the electronic shutter. Realistically though, most of us will never need to use that fast frames per second in our everyday use, unless you happen to be a photographer of Formula 1 or the NFL, in which case, what's up? The Mark II also comes with significantly better low light performance. On top of the backlit sensor, there is also a 5-axis stabilization system, compared to the previous 3-axis. So the sensor will almost be guaranteed to get you crispy shots every single time. Because of this, the ISO and shutter speed have also both been able to increase. The ISO up to 64,000 and shutter speed up to 15 seconds in mechanical mode. Granted, with the Mark I, I've never been able to happily use the higher ISO levels above 24,000 without getting annoyingly high levels of noise. So we'll see how the new backlit sensor changes all that. For nighttime photography, there is also a new warm display colors mode, essentially turning your displays into infrared light. With this, you'll be able to see highlights and shadows of your exposure in real time, while saving your eyes from harsh LED lights at night. The new processor will be an XSpeed 7, with 9 types of different subject detection, including people, birds, dogs, cats, cars, bicycles, motorcycles, trains, and airplanes. What? No love for boats now? The speed of this detection should also be extremely quicker with blind focusing. There's no secret that the Mark I Z5 was a very bare bones entry-level camera into the full-frame mirrorless market. But because of this, it's one of the most affordable while still giving you pro-level performance for photography. So how does that compare to the new Z5 with all the upgraded tech? Surprisingly, Nikon will be selling the Z5II body for only $1,700. I know that's still a lot, but compared to the Mark I, that's only $300 more. I'm starting to think that the Z5II will perform more mid-range rather than entry-level that Nikon keeps advertising it as. That existential crisis only seems to be getting worse and worse now. So, if you have a Z5 Mark I, do you plan on upgrading to the Mark II? I honestly was still pretty set on getting my dream camera of the Sony a7 III until I saw the Z5II also has a backlit sensor on top of some extra tricks up its sleeve. So let me know your thoughts on the new Z5II down in the comments below, and please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, deuces everybody.